our site Innovates, the podcast for teachers by teachers. My name is Ashley Shinde, and I am one of the secondary academic technology coaches here in Northside. In today's episode, we are talking with our special guest about artificial intelligence and what that means for us as educators and the kiddos in our rooms. Our guest today recently released his latest book, AI for Educators, Learning Strategies, Teacher Efficiencies, and a Vision for an Artificial Intelligence Future. It is a must read for educators everywhere as we venture through newish waters. Janet Winninghoff right here is a big fan. Would you like to say anything about that? No, she's dying too.
So here's what I love about the book, and then I'll be quiet and we can kind of dive into the conversation. Sometimes you read a book and you're like, well, that's really great, but how would that look in my classroom? Or what could I really do with those ideas? And Matt, what I love about your book is it is chock full of ideas and things that teachers can leverage right away, and also think about the future of AI in our classroom.
Yeah, awesome. That's what I was shooting for, at least. So I'm glad to hear that I hit the mark.
For sure.
You definitely did. And so as we get started, to steal a line from your book that we all really enjoyed, our listeners, we hope that you enjoy this episode as we take off today's glasses and put on the glasses of tomorrow. So it is our pleasure to introduce our special guest, Matt Miller.
Yay.
Thank you so much for being here, Matt.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to get to hang out with you all today.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners who might not know who you are?
Yes, absolutely. So I taught high school Spanish for more than 10 years here in West Central Indiana, like little rural middle of nowhere, West Central Indiana, like live on 25 acres and have 2 neighbors in a 1 mile radius. Taught at a little bitty school, graduating class of 32. We did have a drive your tractor to school day.
Oh
so like, if that's starting to give you the picture of what part of the world I live in, just was teaching high school Spanish and realized that, some of the traditional things like right out of the textbook, the workbooks, the worksheets, like all of that stuff was just not helping my students to learn how to speak Spanish. And so I just started trying stuff, stuff with technology, stuff to try to engage kids. And a lot of that stuff didn't have anything to do with my textbooks. Hence the name of a lot of the things that I do. It's called Ditch That Textbook. It was just my way of kind of like freeing myself from having to march chapter by chapter through a textbook and getting a little bit of ownership and a little bit of creativity involved in it. And so since then, I've published a whole bunch of free resources at the Ditch That Textbook website. Get to do professional development with teachers sometimes, have written some books and stuff like that. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell right there.
And we love you for it. Those resources always came in clutch. As a teacher in the classroom, those freebies that you give out all the time were so beneficial. Absolutely love the Ditch That Textbook.
It was so funny because I was chatting with a teacher the other day and he was like, hey, I saw like this template for like this Netflix thing, it's a Netflix template. And I really see it as like this timeline because he taught social studies. I'm like, hey, why don't you share that with me? And he shares it with me. It's your stuff, Matt. Oh my goodness. Yes, this is good.
My favorite thing is when my wife comes home and was like, someone was telling me about this template that's on on your website. I'm like, she didn't even tell me, it just appeared, like they just found it. I love that stuff.
Beautiful.
We love it.
Yes. And so we'd love to take a further dive with you on artificial intelligence, since it is something that's kind of, creating a buzz and stirring up some conversation with the schools that we talk to and schools all around the country and all around the world. So we would love to get your input on that. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about artificial intelligence, what it is exactly for our viewers who might be unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've got for those that are watching on the video, I've got some slides if you want to enable screen sharing for me.
Here we go. You are ready.
Well, okay. All right, cool. So while we're doing that, I can tell you that artificial intelligence has been around for a while. Actually, sometimes people are like, oh, ChatGPT just came around and oh my goodness, now artificial intelligence is the thing. No, it's been here for a while. Like, it's all over your smartphone, Alexa and Siri and the Google Assistant, all of those run off of artificial intelligence. Autocorrect is run off of artificial intelligence, even though it's not very intelligent sometimes, it still does the job. Even Amazon suggesting things for you to buy based on stuff that you have purchased before. All of that is artificial intelligence. It just keeps getting more and more intelligent. And I think what happened recently is that ChatGPT came onto the scene, and ChatGPT was basically just, well, it's a type of, it's a large language model that uses natural language processing, which basically just means it's like this friendly face on a great big data set and a whole bunch of training that artificial intelligence has done, so that it can take all of that data, process it, do smart things with it, and then spit something out that feels like natural human language. So like it says on my slides here, ChatGPT is, and this is just one artificial intelligence product. It's probably one that is so different and so kind of like groundbreaking for most of us normal people who are not in computer science, that this was the first time that we really, really noticed it in a way that is transformative in this way. So let's do a couple quick definitions since we're doing that. It's an AI assistant created by OpenAI. It interacts with users conversationally, so you can just ask it questions, ask it to do things. It'll answer questions and create things. And it is an example of artificial intelligence, which is training computers to think like humans, to follow certain patterns and to draw from memories, which feels kind of weird at first when you think about it, like training computers to think like humans. We go, but computers shouldn't be able to think like humans. But really, if you think about the way that we think, we are very algorithmic, formulaic type of thinkers. We go through a series of steps to try to reach a conclusion. Well, computers are really good at following a formula and following an algorithm. So if it starts to learn a little bit more about the processes that we use to come to a conclusion, and it draws from all of this information people have, written and published about how we think, like, it really can sort of learn from that kind of thing. So anyway, long story short, AI's been around for a while. This is just a new iteration of it that uses it in a way that we're not used to seeing mainstream. And I think the implications of it, I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, but the implications of it are pretty wide reaching potentially for education.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned, that it's been around for so long and we just might not even have realized it, right? Like Google Maps is using artificial intelligence and so many of the other things that we just use, and we're like, oh, it's an everyday usage. Well, what makes this any different? And so kind of thinking about that, right? ChatGPT, it's not the first disruptor, obviously, in education, right? Certainly not the last. I mean, we've had Google Translate, Grammarly, even the calculator, if you wanted to go so far as the calculator, right? Just to name a few of the disruptors. But for some reason, ChatGPT is really causing that stir. And there is some anxiety for educators, right?
Concern.
Some concern. But also there's a lot of positive to it. So we're just curious to get your opinion. How is ChatGPT, how is AI different or similar from those previous disruptors?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, you hear whenever you're comparing it to disruptive technology, you hear people talk about the calculator a lot. Everybody loves to say, oh, those math teachers back in the day, they were all like, you'll never walk around with the calculator in your pocket. Guess what? We don't just have a calculator. Now we get a supercomputer that we walk around with in our pockets. Yeah. So yeah, we do have those. And so in that way, it's similar in that, back when we did a lot of calculations by hand and the readily available calculator was not a normal thing, math teachers were really concerned because they're like, how will people know how to do these calculations? And so they were trying to say, calculators are not good. We need kids to continue to do things by hand. And there was some pushback. But then eventually calculators became more and more mainstream. And then what happened? math instruction started to evolve a little bit so that it wasn't so focused on being able to do calculations by hand. It was, okay, now that we can outsource some of this, some of the, little menial, trivial calculations, we can outsource that to a calculator. Now that we have that extra free time and that extra space in our curriculum, what can we do now? And so it starts to level everything up. We're able to get to higher levels of math because we don't have to spend so much time doing rote calculations. So you compare this to artificial intelligence. There's a lot of similarities in that some of these artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT, let's use ChatGPT as an example. It is, it's able to do things with text. So you ask it to write me a summary, ask me to write me a list of bullet points, ask it to give me a definition. Now give me a definition that a fifth grader could understand. It's got all of these different variations that it can do. So now the question becomes, if we can outsource some of those basic things and then take the draft that ChatGPT gives us, what can we do now with all of that extra time and space? It makes you start to think, instead of doing some of the drudgery and some of the little tasks that we ask students to do, it's going to free us up to be able to do higher levels of creation, maybe more real life levels of creation, maybe more sophisticated thinking. ChatGPT becomes kind of like a second or third or 12th or 23rd voice in the conversation. It starts to inform us in different ways. And so it starts to give us the ability. I like to compare it to the tide in a harbor. Think of a whole bunch of boats on the water in a harbor, and the tide comes in. And then what happens to all of those boats? All of those boats rise because the tide comes in. I really think that AI is going to have an impact like that in classrooms. So that's the similarity. You brought up the calculator. You want to know, how is it similar or different? That's the similarity, I think. The difference is that this is going to have much deeper implications than just the calculator, than just doing hand calculations versus punching it in on our little calculator. Because what I think artificial intelligence is going to do is create the first draft for us of lots and lots and lots of things. It's not just going to tell us 2 + 2 = 4. And it's not just going to solve for X for us. It's going to create that first draft. And so the bigger, wider implications are going to be, what do we do with that first draft? Are we going to take that first draft, copy and paste it, and stick in a document and pretend it's our own? Well, I mean, we can, but if we're not going to do anything to it, we're going to get outsourced by artificial intelligence pretty quickly.
And
so
I think that's the fear that a lot of the teachers have, is that kids are going to do that step and stop there.
Yeah. And so I think, and so related to that, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to think, how can we adjust the activities and assignments that we want students to do to preserve that thinking, to preserve that human skill? It's going to take us a little while, and we're going to have to try some things, and they're going to have to fail sometimes, but then some of them won't fail, and we'll go, oh, well, this kind of works. And then we'll share them with other teachers, and we'll hear what other teachers are doing. And we start trying, you know how we do as teachers. That's what we're so good at as an education community, isn't it? It's like we share things with each other. We talk, we go to conferences, we get on social media, and we spread the good stuff far and wide, and we all get better because of it. I think give it some time, and we're going to start seeing some of those examples. And when we see some examples of things that work, it's going to spark new ideas of things that we can try, and everybody starts to get better. It's kind of like the calculator. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't immediate, but over time we started to get more and more comfortable with it, and then we ran with it, and things got better.
Absolutely love that. I love that the first draft idea. I've always thought of it as like a thinking partner, and it's a great thinking buddy for me, like whenever I get stuck with something, or maybe I'm lacking clarity and I need a thinking partner to help me with that. But what do I do with that? And how do we get our kids? I think that's that thinking critically, being creative and really
Yes.
owning something and making it their own. I love it. Just time, right?
Yeah.
We need time.
And to-
Michelle, oh, sorry.
Can I riff on that just real quickly?
Yes, riff.
I really believe that using artificial intelligence and thinking are not mutually exclusive. See, I think we have this sort of like black and white binary view of artificial intelligence is going to make us stupid so that we don't have to think.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily, there's a lot of nuance in it. It's not like saying I can either use artificial intelligence or I can think with my brain. No, there's lots of both of those, lots of places where you can use it to inform what you're thinking,
Yep.
or you can use artificial intelligence and then improve on it with your brain. And this is the kind of thinking that kids are going to have to be ready to do out in the real world. We don't want them to do their work without consulting the internet or artificial intelligence. But we also don't want them to just use artificial intelligence, not use their brains. The answer is somewhere in the middle, and they've got to figure out how to do that.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. All right. So Matt, I was going to talk to you about the implications, but you kind of already answered that question.
Mhm.
So I'm going to approach this from the view of a veteran teacher
Ooh,
Okay.
who
yes.
is anti-tech and doesn't have any
Uh-huh.
idea about AI and how it can be used in the classroom. What kind of advice would you give a veteran teacher like myself, who is a little reluctant to chat GPT and AI?
Okay. I'll take this from a couple of different directions. I think number one, I would encourage a veteran teacher to take it slow. I mean, there's no one who's saying that you have to completely revolutionize education and change everything immediately. I mean, for heaven's sake, we had to do that a few years ago. And we're still sort of recovering from it, right? Like all of the remote learning and everything was just imposed on us overnight. And we had to change everything that we did immediately as an emergency. So I don't think anybody wants us to go through that trauma all over again. But I think we also have to recognize that if we look through our tomorrow glasses, someone alluded to that at the beginning of the show, I think. If we look through our tomorrow glasses to what the future is going to look like for the students in our classrooms today, we start to see that some of the skills that we're trying to develop in them and some of the information we're trying to instill in them right now is not going to be as relevant in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. And so when we look at it through our tomorrow glasses, in fact, since I mentioned that, I just got this on Amazon the other day. So I'm going to like pull this out here and show it to you. This is a stage prop I'm going to use for a keynote speech. We got to take off our
girls.
today glasses if you're
Here we
watching
go.
this. And we're going to put on our
Oh, I love it.
tomorrow glasses.
Fancy.
Those are fancy.
Right?
You
It's
saw it
got
here
little
first.
LEDs in them. So, okay, now I need to take them off because I can't see. There we go. But looking through our tomorrow glasses means we're looking into the future to figure out what is it exactly that our students are going to need, and not continuing to teach with our today glasses, which is what is common and accepted and normal today. And that's hard, especially for us teachers who want to get it right and want to be correct. You know, it means that we're going to have to take some imperfect action, because teaching with our tomorrow glasses deals with forecasting into the future, you know, predicting and prognosticating about what students are going to need. And we really don't know that, but we have to be willing to at least try. And so I would say to that veteran teacher, you know, I would just remind them that we have the privilege as adults of looking through today glasses, but our students don't have that privilege, because their future depends on what you see through the tomorrow glasses. So I would say, you know, continue to look forward into tomorrow and try to figure out. Now, the nice thing is that some of the things we do in class today will serve those students in the future when we look through the tomorrow glasses. It doesn't mean we have to throw everything away. We just have to be willing to look at it critically, I think.
Mhm.
I think that's an important point. You know, it doesn't mean throwing everything away. And I think sometimes we feel like it's an all or nothing situation.
Right.
We either embrace this and it's all the things, or it's none of the things.
And I think one of the other things that teachers are a little concerned with or think a lot about is that idea of plagiarism and cheating. And I know you've talked a lot about that. You have it in your book. You talked about it. I was the pleasure of seeing you at TCA, and you had that wonderful graph
Yes.
right there. Yeah.
Ta-da.
Rethinking.
I had it queued up.
plagiarism
I
and
thought we
cheating.
might be talking about this.
Yeah, and after I saw you, I've done a lot of talking about this graphic with my
Yeah.
teachers. And
Yeah.
I'd love it if you could touch a little bit more on that.
I would love to. Yeah. So that's been sort of the big talk, hasn't it? Since AI has come out in all of the teacher circles. It's like, we're worried that kids are going to cheat. And we're also worried about plagiarism. Before I get into the graphic, let me give you a couple of quick definitions. Plagiarism. Plagiarism is taking someone else's intellectual property and trying to pass it off as your own. That's our current working definition of plagiarism. If you look at intellectual property, what does that mean? Well, that's creative work done by a human. So we've got a little bit of a gap when it comes to that word plagiarism, because if it's creative work done by a human, if that's what intellectual property is, what is work that's done by artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT?
Mhm.
Well, if you ask ChatGPT who owns the work that it produces, it will tell you that it's not copyrighted. It's not intellectual property because it's not human. It is work that is considered to be in the public domain. Public domain means that it's not owned by, no one has copyright ownership over it. Nobody has intellectual property rights of it. So technically, I promise I'll speak to the plagiarism thing in a second, but this is one of those like very tricky situations that we're in this specific point in history. Technically, whenever artificial intelligence creates something, and if a student copies it and pastes it and turns it in, by the definition of plagiarism, it's not plagiarism. So that's something, that's why I think it's so important to talk about definitions. I think that the definition of plagiarism and the definition of cheating, the definition of a lot of things, is going to get overhauled, or at least going to start to morph a little bit as we go. Now, I'm not saying this to say that if kids copy and paste something mindlessly from ChatGPT, that they should be able to do that. I don't. In fact, that's kind of what we're going to get to here. So if you're looking at the screen and you can see my graphic here, this just goes to show you kind of the gray area that exists when we talk about cheating. So if we say that kids are using AI, that's cheating, there's a little bit of nuance to it. So what you can see on the screen is from the top, it's a spectrum from the top to the bottom. And up at the top is stuff that is more, almost solely created by artificial intelligence, like student work. With air quotes, student work, but it's created by artificial intelligence. All the way to the bottom, which is created with no artificial intelligence, all done out of human brain. So when you start to look at this, you start to realize that there are different variations of it, which goes to show you that we need to have conversations with kids about what's responsible and what's not, about what we expect and what we don't. So let's dive into this just real quick, okay? At the top of this spectrum, this is the part where it's, created almost, completely by artificial intelligence. So the item we have at the top says, student plugged a prompt into AI, just like whatever the assignment was that you gave them. Plugged it into AI, copy, paste, submit it to the teacher and says, okay, here's my work. I'm going to ask the question after each one of these. Is that cheating? Well, it definitely isn't what we want. We want students to think. We want them to develop skills, and that's not doing it. Okay. So let's go down to the bottom of the spectrum. This is the one where it's created by humans with no artificial intelligence. So what does this one say? It says student wrote all of the assignment content without consulting AI and without consulting the internet. Is that cheating? Well, I don't think it's cheating, but I don't think we can say that it's representative of the kind of work that students are going to do out in the real world. We need to know how to use those resources. So if the answer isn't at the extreme ends of this spectrum, let's look at the middle and just keep reminding yourself as we go through this, that at some point, somewhere as a teacher, you have to draw the line and go, okay, this is cheating, this isn't cheating. And our students going to know where you've drawn that line. That's the other important part. So let's go back up near the top. Remember, the top is the artificial intelligence created side of things. So if we don't want students to copy paste from ChatGPT, let's go down to the next. So they asked AI to create a response, to write something for them. And the student read that essay created by AI. The student edited that AI created essay, adjusted it as necessary, and submitted it. Now there's some student thinking going on here. Is that cheating? These are rhetorical questions, by the way. Let's go a little step down further, okay? What if the student had AI generate multiple responses, like multiple essays, and they look at all 3 or 4 or 5 of those essays and they go, I want to take this introduction from number 1. I want to take point 1 from essay number 4. I want to take point 2 from essay number 2. And I want to take point 3 from essay number 4. And I'm going to put them all together, the best parts, all together in one, edit and adjust as necessary, and submit it. More student thinking there, more decisions they have to make as the writer and creator. Is that cheating? Let's go to the next one. Student wrote out the main ideas in like bullet points, like these are the main things that I want to discuss. We give those bullet points to ChatGPT and it generates an essay. And you take a look at it and you edit it and adjust it as necessary, make sure it's in your voice, and then submit it. Is that cheating? And then let's go down a step further. The student consulted the internet and artificial intelligence for ideas, got ideas for the thing they were going to write, but then wrote it themselves. Doesn't mean that everything came out of their own human brain. They did rely on the internet and artificial intelligence as a resource. Is that cheating? So now you start to see there is all sorts of nuance throughout all of this. And at some point, we got to know what we do want students to do and what we don't want students to do. So it's just like an exercise in thinking about, like, for instance, which of these would you consider cheating? Which of these is relevant to our students' future? And then here's the kicker question. This is the one that really punches you in the gut. Which of these would you do in your work as an adult? And if you want students not to do the stuff that you would do as an adult, you got to come up with a pretty good reason why you wouldn't want to. Because if we're using it as an adult, that's, relevant to our work today. You got to think that would be relevant to students' work tomorrow. So anyway, lots and lots of things to think about, at least, and discussions and conversations to be had related to cheating and plagiarism, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I actually use this with my daughter who's in college. I brought this graph out to her because she was asking me, can I use ChatGPT? And I said, well, let's look and talk about it and see what you think. And so she did kind of in the middle. And honestly, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. She really, it was her work. She worked through it. She pulled information to help her think. And I thought it was fine. I don't know if that was right, but.
Well, I think I got to think that as we go forward into the future, this is something in the middle is going to become what's commonplace. And I mean, I think all throughout it, we've got to ask ourselves the question, or ask our kids the question, because I've got 3 kids too, and I think about them and all of this stuff all the time. We've got to ask, are you getting smarter, getting better as a human being by using this? And then we've also got to ask, if we use it if we use artificial intelligence in a certain way, and it means that we're not bringing value to it as a human, that means, we're likely to be outsourced by artificial intelligence. So you got to keep that in mind. It's big picture stuff, we got to keep that in mind. If you're just going to copy and paste stuff out of artificial intelligence all day long, eventually somebody's going to stop paying you to do that. So how are you going to make a living? What value are you going to bring the world as a human? So, yeah, you could do some of that copy paste stuff, but like big picture, we got to help kids see where that's going to get them eventually, which is not super far, I don't think.
And I like how you address some of this in the book too. Chapter 6 is acting responsibly in an AI integrated world. And to me, that's all of the things that you just said, being a good digital citizen, thinking, critically about the way we're leveraging these tools, but not giving up like that human voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Good thinking.
Anything else that we wanted to ask?
I had one more question, as we're wrapping up. I know we've talked a lot about Chat GPT on here, but I'm curious, do you have some other tools or programs that our teachers might be interested in jumping in and trying? If you'll just throw out some of those names for us so that our teachers can have something to look into in addition to the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for instance, there's some of our favorite tools out there that are already starting to integrate AI. We're off air before we got onto the broadcast. We were talking about our mutual love of Canva. And I mean, Canva, right? Yeah. And I think Canva has been sort of a leader in how can, we've got the magic, right? We've got the, docs to decks, you've got like all of this stuff where it uses the artificial intelligence to help us create things, to make design suggestions and everything. I know, Adobe's getting in on that. Google and Microsoft are in their productivity suites and everything. So you might start to see it in some places. There are lots of really good AI image generators. You've got things like Midjourney and DALL-E, and I know Bing has a really good one. Adobe's got Firefly. Those are all things that will make images for you based on your text description of it. And it's kind of incredible. Not all of them are free, but it's kind of incredible what all they will do. And so, if you want an image, you want to create a what would happen if scenario for students to write about or talk about, about social studies or literature or science or anything, like it will create those images for you that you can show students. And so I've seen some teachers doing some really creative things with that. There are some teacher tools out there that will even help you create resources for your class or help you plan lessons. Curipod is one of my favorites that will help you create. Oh, I'm getting lots of claps out of the group in this one. Yeah, it helps you create interactive slides. If you're familiar with Pear Deck or Nearpod, it's a little bit like that. Only all you have to do is just type in the topic, choose a grade level, and then you can add content standards if you want to, and it will create, slides with images and bullet points and, polls for your students to do, and open-ended questions and even brain breaks. Like it's kind of incredible what all it will do. There's a lesson planning tool called Copilot. There's EduAid, there's Conquer, there's, all of these different AI tools that are out there that do a wide variety of different things. One word of caution, though, there is a huge land grab right now for AI tools in education. There are lots of entrepreneurs that are trying to get their foot in the door in this space. So just because you see a tool doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be helpful or that it's going to be good or it was created with educator input or any of that. So, especially right now, though, the market is going to be flooded with a bunch of these AI tools, and we've got to be sort of, our good critical eyes to look at things and figure out, is this really going to help me? So yeah, it just kind of keep an eye out that not everything that was created with AI is going to be a useful tool.
Oh, thank you for that. And hey, teachers, if you need a thought partner to kind of vet those, don't forget that your tech coach is available. So please reach out to us.
All right. Well, we don't want to take up any more of your time, but thank you so much for joining us,
Mhm.
Matt Miller, in this great conversation and everything, artificial intelligence and all of your input. It was absolutely wonderful. So everybody be sure to check out Matt Miller, as he offers, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, a slew of resources that are available to y'all. Matt, where can people find you? What do you offer teachers that they might not know about?
Oh my goodness, there's a lot. So the best place to go probably is just to go to ditchthattextbook.com, which is the website I've been hosting for more than a decade with lots of free teacher resources. In fact, if people want to get on our email newsletter, that's where I'm sharing, like practical things that you can use in your class right away. In fact, as we're recording this right now, I'm working on a post about Curipod that we just talked about that's going to go out in my email this week and next week. So, jump on and you can get those kinds of resources there. Of course, there's the AI for Educators book that has been doing pretty well out there with teachers and getting it into their hands. And I've already seen, yep, there we go. Janet's already showing me her copy of it, which is cool. So you can get that as a paperback or in Kindle ebook as well. And I'm on social media. Like, I'm real big on Twitter. That's probably my biggest one. You can find me at Matt Miller. That's the letter J, Matt with 2 T's, Miller on Twitter, and all of the other places. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to get connected with everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We hope that everybody gets on there and enjoys your resources, because we know that we definitely do, and we try to get them out to our teachers as much as possible. You like to cause some controversy on your Twitter. I saw it on the other day, your ripeness of the banana.
Yeah, I'm a fan of letting bananas get ripe so that they have their full flavor. And I was like, about to have lunch here. Let's see what kind of controversy I can stir up on Twitter. So it was kind of fun.
Must have been very flavorful. It was like an all brown banana.
Yeah.
That's the perfect one.
It wasn't mushy though. I will say that it was a lot better than it looked. It was a little bit of a deceiving picture. So.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. I was just wondering. Hasn't left my brain since then. Thank you. So thank you again, Matt, for joining us. And to our listeners, we hope to be with you again very soon in the Twitterverse for our next Ed Chat on May 16th. A few of our friends in the Whole Child department will be joining us, and we are very excited to have them. And so, before we sign off, any last minute words?
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Matt.
Matt. It was so great to see you. We'll see you soon.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Matt.
Bye.